Welcome to RMB Africa Focus, a dedicated series that will focus on Africa's economic resilience and strategic role in global economies. Africa has seen an explosion of fintech startups over the past few years. The fintech sector isn't just growing, it's surging at a pace unmatched by any other region. African consumers are moving from brick and mortar banks to digital with the help of improved connectivity. Join us as we delve into the key issues and have an in-depth look and conversation with RMB experts. This week we are in conversation with RMB's Arun Varughese. Arun, the fintech sector is growing and it's surging at a pace unmatched, especially in Africa. Talk to us about and unpack the growth in the sector.
Thanks, Crystal. I think when you're thinking about growth, you must always put it in the context of the market. And the market that we have in Africa is a very large one. So we have 1.4 billion people on the continent, and the World Bank estimates between 600 to 800 million of them don't even have internet access. We also have one of the largest unbanked populations and one of the largest youth populations. So when you think of that, it's a very large addressable market. So if you think about our youth, they are tech savvy, they're digital first, and the traditional finance products that are out there have often been not directed at the unbanked population and not digital first. So as mobile phones become more and more prevalent, as connectivity becomes prevalent in Africa, you're seeing people adopt digital solutions, and that's what's driving the fintech sort of surge in Africa, and we think that journey's got plenty more years to go still.
How do African governments, investors, and the private sector navigate risks? Because clearly there's opportunities, but there are also risks, Arun.
No, absolutely. And look, I think let's maybe start with the opportunities for those three groupings. I think from our perspective, the thing that needs to drive Africa to the next level, at least from the RMB perspective, is we will aim to connect and to digitize Africa. That is our goal. And once we have connected all the Africans on the continent and given them access to the digital world, we think we can leapfrog us into the next age. And how do we do that, right? It needs significant investment in digital infrastructure. It needs the right policies and frameworks from government, and it needs support from investors around the world. So take a step back and look at what RMB has done, for example, in South Africa and the rest of the continent. We've been one of the biggest funders of digital infrastructure, fiber, towers, data centers on the continent. So we have helped drive this digitalization and connectivity through the provision of capital. You've had a lot of private investors from South Africa and internationally supported equity capital. And over and above that, you have governments that have now enabled the right frameworks and regulation to enable new technologies such as fiber and undersea cables, etc., for that to land up in our continent to connect to everyone. So you need all three in a three-way tripartite sort of alliance to push it forward, right? And if you even take a step back and think about the larger corporations in the world like a Microsoft or Meta or Google, they are investing in undersea cables around Africa. They invest in digital infrastructure because they see the potential of putting every African on the continent, which will eventually drive out their own sort of corporate goals and activities.
So just changing gear now, Arun, cryptocurrencies, we know that it's risen prominently globally, but how is this innovation driving change here in Africa?
Sure. So look, I think the basis for cryptocurrencies, and if you go back to the OG of Bitcoin, it was meant to be a peer-to-peer system of exchange that was independent of the financial system, that was digital first. If you look at the African sort of problems we have here, one of the biggest issues we have here is the cost of remittances. Africa's got a large migrant population, for example, living in developed markets, sending money back to Africa, or even South Africa into Zimbabwe, and the cost of remittance still remains quite high. Stable coins and cryptocurrency is like an obvious solution that can enable frictionless cross-border payments at a lower price point. That's just one major use case, but beyond that, we can go into supply chain, private sort of exchanges that enable free flow of information in a trusted environment. So we think that the use cases for crypto are only beginning, and it can really help solve African specific problems.
Talk to us. We know that in Africa, the lives of women, small business owners, and everyday consumers have dramatically changed because of the fintech sector and having connectivity. Now, of course, it's been a topic, and South Africa's in the spotlight because of the G20 presidency. Talk to us about perhaps some of the conversations within the B20 sector.
Yeah, so our RMB is contributing quite heavily to B20, and things on the agenda include things like digital inclusion and driving the growth of digital infrastructure. So I think part of all that is making sure that marginalized groups, such as minorities, such as females, can get included into the economy. And I think that's really the goal. It's about how do we have the right public-private partnerships, how do we have the right regulatory policies and framework in from the government that encourages both competition, encourages investment, and pushes us forward. Because ultimately, if you take a small stat, like the cost of mobile data in South Africa is 35% more expensive than in the US as a baseline, right? And if we can provide cheap data, cheap smartphones, and get everyone connected to the internet, the opportunities for e-commerce, health, education, that can be driven right to the hands of the people that really need it at a low price point. It will lead to unbelievable change on the continent. So absolutely, I think the policies and the goals of B20 are completely aligned with driving that goal of digitization and connectivity, because we think it's a step change for the world, and particularly for Africa.
So of course corporations across Africa have to deal with the daily challenges of cybersecurity. Arun, share with us, what countries, governments, private sector can actually do to have some of those risk management strategies in place.
Yeah, so cybersecurity is, very much in the spotlight. We've had sort of high-profile incidents at the government departments, recently at some of the corporates, and it shows you that I think even the most sophisticated networks are vulnerable to attacks, and we have very sophisticated groups sitting across the world targeting people, not just yourself in individual capacity, but actually corporations for ransomware and other malicious sort of activity. I think we need to all really prioritize cybersecurity. It can't be an afterthought. It has to be a deep priority, not just for governments, but also for corporations and for individuals, right? I think the government has put in place cybersecurity type acts, but I think it needs to do more in terms of really putting it high up on the agenda. So I think being aware of the high level of risk, getting the right training in place for everyone that's involved with IT systems, making sure we have the adequate controls and systems to prevent attacks as impossible, and also lastly about having regulation enforcement. So cybersecurity has to be prosecuted, and criminals need to be gone after. So I think having the right sort of frameworks in government that can enable that is also a key element of that.
And then just lastly, RMB, a key African bank, what's been the role in enabling these fintech ecosystems and actually driving connectivity and digitization across the continent?
Sure, that's quite a lot for us to get through in a very short amount of time. So I think RMB plays a very critical role as one. We are one of the largest digital players on the continent with our sister company FNB, but even beyond that, we have partnered with some of the largest fintechs on the continent to be their sponsor and settlement bank. So in effect, we have partnered with them to enable payments on the continent. As I've mentioned before, RMB has deployed significant amounts of capital with digital infrastructure players, from the tower companies, fiber providers, data center providers, to allow them capital and banking service to enable them to both build the connectivity and to grow. And lastly, even the large mobile operators and telecommunications providers, we are large banking partners too. So we are doing our best to partner with our corporate clients to enable their businesses to achieve the ultimate goal of digitizing and connecting Africa.
Thank you, Arun.
Thank you, Crystal.
Digital inclusion has become a cornerstone for economic growth, allowing marginalized groups to access financial services and resources that were previously out of reach. During the recent B20 meetings, discussions highlighted the importance of collaboration between governments, the private sector, to foster innovation and expand access to technology, which is essential for building resilient economies. RMB has played a pivotal role in facilitating access to capital, enabling fintech ecosystems to thrive, and empowering African nations. This approach not only enhances financial inclusion, but also stimulates local entrepreneurship and job creation.